And I will work to pass the first ever federal ban on price gauging on food.
So Kamala Harris is not one to put out policy positions. We've seen that. There's none on her website. She doesn't give speeches, but in her most recent speech, she decided to talk about one of her economic policy plans, an actual original one, not just one stolen by Trump, like the no tax on tips. The basis of her economic plan, one of the key pillars, is going to be no price gouging. And somehow she thinks this is a brilliant idea that's never been tried before, even though it has been tried before in the Soviet Union and Venezuela and Argentina and basically every socialist to communist country throughout the history of the world. And that's led to complete disaster because the government is trying to control the free market, and it does not work at all, especially the bigger the country, because the bigger the country, the more diversity in prices, because, you know, in America, we have cities like New York, and then we have towns of 200 people. Setting price caps on food specifically is a huge, huge no-no. Every economist agrees that's not going to work. We have some laws against price gouging in the United States, mainly during emergencies. So things that are like used during emergencies, you cannot price gouge, like generators or bottled water or stuff like that. Certain states have laws against that. And people still dispute if that should be allowed because is that hurting the free market or not? There's much more debate about that because, you know, states of emergency are special cases. But in every day-to-day life, Kamala Harris wants to set price caps on food. So no price gouging. But what is price gouging? Well, like many of these vague, arbitrary things, it depends on the situation. So I know it when I see it. You cannot make laws for an entire country in a vast group of goods and services. So like food and everything that goes entails to getting food from, you know, farm to table, all the services involved in that add prices to the food. You cannot make one clear price. Like you cannot say eggs cannot be more than $3. That for the entire country, that's not possible. Federally, that's what you'd have to do is set something federally, and you can't do that. It's going to create black markets because people need their eggs and their chicken, and it's not going to happen. Here, if you look at a supply and demand curve, which most people don't seem to understand, is when you set an artificial price cap, it does not align with the supply-demand curve, and you are kind of artificially placing that marker, and all that does is mean that companies are only going to supply as much as they can to make money. They're not going to supply more. And so demand goes way up. There's not enough supply because why would you make excess supply if you're not going to make money on it? And then people have to go to black markets to meet the demands. You know, selling out of the back of the store. Well, we can only sell eggs for $3, but in order to make a profit, I need to sell them for $5. And then the consumer says, well, I want eggs and I'll pay $5. You know, the supply and demand, which is what happens right now, is not being fulfilled. And so people are going to fulfill it illegally. And that's going to lead to a whole host of other problems. So you cannot set these prices. But that's what she wants to do. And this isn't her only idiotic plan. She wants to give $25,000 to first-time home buyers. Well, all that's going to do is add $25,000 to every home price. If you're selling a house in 2024 for $400,000, in 2025, you're just going to sell it for $425,000 because you know that person is going to have an extra $25,000. It's just the expected cost of doing business now. And who that really hurts is non-first-time home buyers because the price of every home is going to rise to meet, maybe not exactly $25,000 because you have to account for the first-time and non-first-time, but it's going to be higher. That prices of houses are going to actually rise. And who that's going to affect is the people who are not getting the $25,000. And good luck trying to find out if people are first-time home buyers. You know, like that system's not going to be scammed in some way. And how is the federal government going to handle that? Like you're going to have to create whole new departments and hire thousands of people to investigate these sort of things. So like with the price gouging and then the housing, and it's just not going to happen. And it's just going to lead to ruin. It's going to make everything more expensive. everything. And there's this concept on the left, and I think people on the left don't seem to understand. They think that human beings can act rationally, or like can be convinced to act in a rational manner, or a manner that the government wishes. Like they think you can perfect the human. That's not possible. We are basically monkeys. We're not that smart. And that's not even just from like an intellectual, like most people aren't that smart standpoint. It's that just human beings make decisions based on our instincts. We make decisions based on our emotions. We can never be fully rationalized. It's not possible. And so the best way you can create a system, and how conservatives want to do it, is playing to the people, in the sense that if you know humans act in a certain way, you should create systems around that. You shouldn't create a perfect ideal system and then try to shove humans into that and make it work. That it won't happen. That's why communism is amazing on paper until you account for people, until you actually account for what humans tend to do in any given situation. Our greed, our envy, our lethargy, like it just, no system, no matter perfectly designed, if it does not account for humans' rationality, it won't work. And so what you need to do is you need to create systems that encourage people to function in the way you want by pursuing their interests. So like understanding how people work, the psychology of people, and then creating systems that manipulate that in a certain way if you desire. And that's kind of what the free market does, is like we know humans, their greed leads them to get a better price or a better deal, and the free market allows that. And so we encourage the free market, and then we have certain regulations to stop it from being abusive, because human greed gone too far, we've seen the consequences of that. But to make a system like this communism, or like this ideal that if we just put these laws in place, everyone will behave, and they'll totally forget that they're rational actors, or like irrational actors, the human being, the human mind, and that they'll just behave in ways that are illegal and contrary to like the benefit of society because it satisfies their own greed. Thinking that won't happen is just insane. So these are never going to work, and that's like a kind of a critical flaw of the left, is they think, oh, we can like advance the human rationale to a point that like is somehow elevated from how it's been for all of human history, despite our many, many flaws. They'll say that we can create a perfect system, and at the same time accuse half the country of being inherently evil and racist and demonic and whatever. So I don't know how you rationalize those two things. But so government control, more control, does not lead to like better outcomes, especially if you're doing everything you can to go against like what proper functioning people decide to do in the decisions that we know humans make. If you go against those, it's not going to work. It's like everyone who has children, like if you understand like children behave in certain ways, like everybody thinks their kid may be a little exceptional in one way or another, a little eccentric, but like generally kids behave in certain ways. Like they're dumb, they're naive, they have the same patterns. We know this. And so how you raise kids is you have to play along with that. You can't sit a toddler down and try to convince them like right and wrong. If you want them to do something, you punish them, or you encourage them and say, oh, it's so great that you did that thing. So you go along with like how humans operate, how they learn, how they behave. That's how you set rules in a family. And governments really are just big extensions of families. They're bigger groups of people, and a lot less personal. And so it's a lot harder to make laws and expect people to just follow them. You need to encourage them to follow them in a way that satisfies their own like innate human desires. And that's very hard to do. But the way to do that is not through control, because people just won't behave that way. And it'll create a whole host of new problems that you're going to have to deal with. And I think that's exactly what we'll see. Kamala clearly has no idea about economics at all. I don't know if this is just blatantly pandering or if she's really that idiotic. It could be a bit of both, because the pandering sounds great. Like, oh, everybody gets more money, first-time home buyers. And, we're going to make prices not as expensive. It's like that's not the problem. Like the inflation is the problem. It's like these corporations are not all getting together in a room and deciding that they're going to raise egg prices. That's not what's causing this. The energy that it takes, like when you raise the price of gas, gas goes into the trucks that move everything, and the heating and the cooling and all that sort of stuff that happens throughout the food process, tax on more expenses to everything. And so when we don't have energy, when we are printing money endlessly, these things are what's actually affecting the prices. When you bring in millions and millions of immigrants, legal and illegal, when you have a housing shortage, bringing in more people doesn't matter if their paper says legal or illegal, it's still more people, and it still adds to the housing crisis. So that's not a solution either. Like, bringing in more immigrants is just going to increase the housing problem. There's things that you have to do outside of like trying to governmentally pass like laws stating what prices should be at. You should create the environment where these things happen naturally, where people will behave in the most natural way, and you take advantage of that. You don't try to control it. You take advantage of human nature and use it for the benefit of society and human flourishing. If you don't understand that concept, then you're going to have a bad time, because trying to control people always ends in disaster. We've seen that throughout history. That's why all these communist countries have collapsed, either collapsed or just devolved into capitalism, right? Well, devolved's not the right word, but turned into a more capitalistic system because it wasn't working. And that's exactly what happened in the U.S., but after many, many years of standing in the breadline and total economic collapse and disaster. So thanks for watching. Like and subscribe if you haven't. It really helps me out. I'm going to keep following this election and talking about the policies that both candidates have, things I like and things I don't like. So stay tuned for that, and I really appreciate you watching.